Yeah, what's up? So I was thinking a little bit about the whole thing about pretending you're okay when you're not okay. And it's one of those things that kind of I feel like a lot of people probably experience, like whether you're with family or friends or you're at like a job or something like that, like just that kind of mask you wear in a sense to try and pretend like you're feeling something you're not, trying to be happy or trying to pretend like you're happy when you're sad or you're like feeling all this stuff when you're not feeling anything. And I lived that out for a few years, and it's interesting how much it kind of wears on you. Because I had this whole mental thing about not wanting to be a burden, not wanting other people to have to worry about me, all stuff. Probably the biggest reason why I, for however many years, wasn't very open about losing a parent. And throughout that time, I remember little things happening. Like I remember people would mention like, "Oh, are you like stuff to do with like parents or something like that?" And I would say my dad in reference to my stepdad when my dad was already dead, and that didn't feel right. And it kind of was one of the things where I would do it to steps that are probably not great, and over time, it's not like I regret it. Like I understand where I was. I mean, like my dad wouldn't even really do a lot of stuff in terms of like expressing or showing stuff. So it seemed like it was almost destiny for it to happen. But it it just I don't know, over time, and especially after I started feeling emotion, like falling in love, all this stuff, I was like, what? Why am I doing this? I know it's like scary to talk about your emotions, do all this stuff, but why not at least try? Like, why not at least take that step? And here we are, like 2 years later, and I've consistently been talking about this and making videos. And all it really takes is that first step of actually being okay and vocalizing that starts stuff, at least something. And like for me, that was like okay after I met this girl or whatever, felt like a little lovey stuff. Then I started talking. It was literally within days, within potentially hours, I started talking, which is absolutely crazy work by me. But it started that ball rolling, and it shouldn't have taken that long. Like it was 2.5 years, shouldn't have taken that long. But which is why I'm talking to you about this. But I recognize that in other areas of my life before and even after about pretending you're something that you're not. And I've had this unique feeling around certain stuff with family stuff in terms of the way I feel in certain dynamics stuff like that. That it's kind of really confusing me and really it's been one of those nagging things that I can't latch onto or forget. And recently, I've tried to be a little more vocal in talking about it because it's been a recurring thing for like decades. And usually, when something's recurring for that long, there's some validity or some reason that it's happening. And so I don't want to try to ignore it. And like I'm saying, decades, you can't ignore it. So that's why I've tried to be open and honest. And sure, it might be sure. Sometimes you're open and honest, and you're met with criticism, you're met with flack, or you're met with this and that. At least be open and extend that olive branch versus just never doing it and expecting it to be like that versus trying and then it happening. It's like when you're like when you think someone's hot or whatever and you don't go up and talk to them because you're like, oh, they're just gonna say no instead of trying and at least okay, if you get rejected, at least you tried. That's kind of what I'm saying with this. And when it comes to like faking your emotions, do all that stuff, there's obviously a time like you can't like it's tough like I remember for me like I would like cry or do any stuff when I'm in classes or something like that or what even though I was feeling sad as hell. But obviously there's certain whatever that you gotta like do whatever. But for the most part, people whatever. And if they don't, if you're like being open and honest and they're not reciprocating, they're not like being authentic, then they're probably not the right people to be around in the first place. But yeah, it's important to feel emotions and to be honest with people around you about how you feel those emotions because it's not just for you, it's also for them. In order for them, it gives them like a platform, it gives them an ability to be open and honest about their emotions, and you kind of create a space to where you guys can talk about it, whether it's girls, guys, friends, whatever the hell. It's when you have that space or that like place for people to talk, it allows for more understanding, it allows for kind of I don't know what it is, the feeling or emotions that something like that like causes, but it allows for more. It allows for like a greater connection and stuff like that. And I feel like that's huge in relationships in particular. When you're not open and honest and talking about how you feel or the way you're whatever, like if you're like holding if whatever they're doing, if that ex partner is doing this and that, and you don't like that, I'm not saying X like an X. I'm saying I was just using it as like X like a letter like whatever. But if a partner was saying this or whatever, and you didn't like the way they said that or whatever, so like that, and you just internalized it and you never vocalized what you were feeling or why you're thinking that and all that stuff, and then someone else happened. You're like, I don't like this. So like, but you kept internalizing it. Eventually, you'll explode, or there'll be things, and it'll lead to fights, lead to this and that. Versus talking about it, and hey, okay, if they're not reciprocating, if they're not like meshing with what you're talking about, and you're not kind of getting what you think you should get back, then there probably is. Then there might be. It might be a situation where it doesn't even make sense to have a relationship in the first place. And finding that stuff out as early as possible is important, because the earlier you find it out, the less time you spend wasting time on stuff that does not really make any sense in the first place. It's kind of super important stuff. Dogs walked in, but I I think it's incredibly important to have that kind of thought process or mindset when it comes to any kind type of friendship, relationship, family dynamic, and all that stuff. Extend olive branch, or like say how you're really feeling, or be open and honest. And if it's not reciprocated, if you don't get back what you think, then that's a way. It kind of helps you, kind of guide you in terms of, okay, who should I say this stuff to, and who, like, what makes sense for me to do this, and who is actually genuine, who actually cares about this and that. Like, it kind of paints a brighter picture, versus like when you just write off stuff or assume something that isn't true. At least try and like see, hey, okay, when I talk about this or that, how do they respond, or are they actually listening? Do they actually care, or are they just pretending? Like, you kind of do. The more and more you do that stuff, the more and more you're able to kind of find your people, or find the stuff that like really get it or really understand you. And then so you do that, the more connection you're able to get, understanding all that stuff, and that kind of stuff allows you to just grow the closer bonds that you can with the people in your life, which is super important. And for me, I've learned that I like, obviously there's time and place for talk about certain things, but it's important to be open and honest, and not kind of pretend like something's not happening when something is. And okay, sure, if I said this to this person, and they were like, and I was not, I was like, hey, like, why what was it like that, or whatever. And there's certain things to where I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk about that with that person and all that stuff. At least I try and learn that, versus just not doing it in the first place. That's kind of one of the things that I try to echo, is that don't write off something or assume something about however someone will respond to the way you're feeling, before actually trying and seeing and vocalizing that and seeing how they respond to that. Because it kind of like it allows you to fully understand like who you're dealing with, kind of thing, when you are able to be your most transparent with someone. And when you feel that the strongest connection, and you feel like you can be that open and honest, that's where the greatest bonds are, especially relationships, family, all that stuff. And finding those people is super important. So, hey, don't be scared. Extend that olive branch, try your thing, and see what happens. You never know. It might just surprise you. But anyways, I love you guys. Subscribe, like, and peace out.